Hey guys, it's Bill from Linden, Tennessee. So I'm gonna go over a little bit how this drivetrain works. I didn't do a whole lot to the Cub today. Um, I'll talk a little bit what I did do, but I wanted to go over how I made my transmission system work. So this is, I guess you'd call an exploded view of a hydrostatic drive from a Cub Cadet. As we're looking at it, that is the input from the engine. So that would be the front of the tractor. That would be the back. And then on the back of these hydrostats, there's another output, and this would have gone to like a power takeoff, a rear power takeoff for something. I don't know. There would have been a housing that went around this, an aluminum housing that went around this and covered this in. This is a bearing surface, and this is not the right shaft, but I don't have the right shaft because the correct shaft is in the tractor. This would have had a gear on it that turned, it's a little pinion gear that turns a bigger gear inside of the differential. I'll get to that in a minute. So just imagine that this is a little bit shorter and it's got gear teeth on it. Okay, and then this is riding in a bearing inside of here. This is where your spin-on filter would go. Yeah, this particular machine had outlets, auxiliary outlets for power steering or a power deck, or I guess whatever you want to do with it. So this is just going to be a kind of crib notes of how this thing works. If you want more detail on that, there's plenty of it. There's much better description than this, but I'm going to give you the rough rundown. So this comes in from the engine, and there is a pump. There's a hydraulic pump in here. This is all going to fall down when I take this off, but not very far. Okay, we'll just let it fall. There's a pump in here. So whenever the engine drives this, it turns that pump, and this is called a gerotor, G-E-R-O-T-E-R, gerotor pump. There's several different kinds of pumps, but anyway, so this is our initial pressure that sends some amount of hydraulic pressure into the actual hydrostatic pump inside the hydrostatic drive. I think this is like 300 psi or something, and then this is a variable displacement pump. And what it has, and I don't have them to show you anymore because I threw them away, it has a whole bunch of little pistons inside here, and they're on a swash plate. So here's the swash plate. That is the swash plate. So these pistons would ride up against that. This would hold the pistons into those cylinders. And if you can imagine, if it's tilted like this, and the top of the motor is driving away from us, then the pistons would go out as it goes to the top of this part here, and then as this pump rotates around, this swash plate would force those pistons in, and that would generate hydraulic pressure that would then come down here. This is also not the actual hydraulic pump. I threw that away, but it's the same. It looks the same thing. You can't really tell. Actually, this might be the hydraulic pump. It's the same thing. In fact, it's the exact same thing. It just doesn't have a swash plate. It's got a fixed swash plate, I guess. So the hydraulic pressure that's formed up here comes through here through some passages, and then acts on these pistons in the opposite manner that the pistons act on the hydraulic fluid. So the pistons push the hydraulic fluid here. Down here, the hydraulic fluid pushes the pistons against a fixed swash plate. So it basically pushes those pistons against a ramp, and then as it pushes down the ramp, it turns the motor, and that's how you go. So this ends up spinning. This will spin at about 3,000 to 3,300 RPM, I think, is what the 16 horse, well, all the Kohler motors turn. And this output actually turns at the same speed, probably a little bit less. There's some pumping losses in here, and but it turns up to anywhere from 0 to around 3,000 RPM. So that would be the input to the transmission. So that's how this works. Now I said all that so I can say this. So now what I did, there is a aluminum case around here, like I said. I took and I cut this case in half, and I kept the bottom half. We'll show you that in a minute. And the top half has a bearing, has a bearing holder and a seal up here. Well, I took and cut that bearing off. So now that's what the front bearing, and then I moved that down here to hold what is essentially now the front of the input shaft. So this, in my application, is actually turned around this way. So the gears are now on the left. The gears going into the transmission are on the left, and this is now my input shaft from my drive shaft on the tractor. And the bearing that was up here is now riding here, holding the front of this. And then inside this aluminum piece on the transmission side, there's a bearing. There's a bearing that supports the gear side of this shaft. I don't know if this is confusing or not, but I'm gonna run with it. Like I say, there's plenty of videos showing you how these things actually work. So what I did was I took this bottom cutoff piece and put it right there. So this piece, where this is cut right here, this actually extended up higher, and the front coming into the engine from the engine would have been here, would have gone to that first stage pump. Nope, it would have been like this. Would have gone to that first stage pump, then it would have come through, and then the hydrostatic pump rides on these splines here, and as that turns, it generates the pressure, sends that pressure down to the hydraulic motor, and then that motor turns the shaft that's still in here in the same spot that it was before, but it's turned by hydraulic pressure. Well, now what I've done is inside of here is hold on, I think I got something fun. Okay, visual aids. So right here is where the hydrostatic motor normally is, and it turns the shaft that's right here, and it turns all the gears that are inside of the transmission. So that pinion gear I was telling you about, it turns on a larger gear, and then that larger gear is on a shaft that goes to the pinion gear of the differential. So that's how that is. So and then that front, and then that bearing that I told you that I cut off and turned around backwards, that's actually inside here. You can see there's a little Allen head bolt there. I made a coupler that spans a distance that I had to just figure out between wherever this coupling ends, which is roughly here, and I wish I'd have had this thing apart. Anyway, I made a thing, and that coupler, it's got a seal in there so that nothing can get inside here. And I welded a piece of aluminum onto that piece of aluminum that I cut, and then just took RTV and sealed it around here. So that'll keep gook out of here. It'll keep hydraulic fluid in here. Not hydraulic, well, it is hydraulic fluid. It's just gear oil. It'll keep your gear oil in there. And anyway, so this, what is my input shaft now, it's always been the input shaft of the transmission, but it used to be the output shaft from the hydrostatic drive. So this is my input shaft now. This turns about 25 times for every one turn of the tires. So it's a 25-to-1 gear ratio. To give you some context, most automotive differentials are around 3-to-1. And then you would have a transmission, say you put transmission in first gear, would maybe be 4-to-1. That 4-to-1 goes into your 3-to-1. That gives you an overall final drive of 12-to-1. Well, this is 25-to-1. I mean, it's a tractor. They're supposed to go slow. I think the top speed on this at 3,000 RPM was like 12 miles an hour. So, I mean, we're not setting any land speed records in stock condition. So, like I say, I got that. This is just there's no splines in here. There's not a keyway in here. This could be my point of, I'll say failure, but it could slip. I don't know. All this is held on with a whole bunch of friction from two Allen screws right here, clamping onto that shaft right there, and then 2 Allen screws on the other side, clamping onto the input shaft to the differential. So if anything's going to slip, it's going to be that. And so this shaft comes through to here, comes to my U-joint. This is keyed, and I got this carrier bearing here just because I wanted extra support on my U-joint. That's maybe unnecessary because I do have that bearing inside there, but I don't know. Better safe than sorry. But it's you know, it's aligned correctly, and it's generally not a good idea to put too many bearings in a row. But anyway, just because they end up binding up and they just end up premature wearing. But so, and then it comes through this universal joint, goes to a splined coupler right there. So that's my little slip joint. And then goes into another universal joint, goes into that shaft right there. It's a 7/8 inch shaft. And then goes, this is keyed also. This gear is keyed also. And then it goes into that coupler. And then the same thing's repeated on this front transmission. So same deal. I had to do that twice. Yeah, so then that's splined to this gear right here. And then there's a toothed sort of a cam belt that comes up to the motor, and this is a 1-to-1. So for every 1 turn of the motor, there's 1 turn of that drive shaft. This little motor is, let's see if we can get some specs on this sucker. This is a peak horsepower of 50, continuous horsepower of 10, RPM of 7,500. It's a voltage of 96 to 108. I'm going to actually be running it at 48 volts. It'll be okay. And there's your temperature and your frame size, whatever all that stuff is. But it's 3-phase AC induction motor, just like you'd find on any like industrial machine. Just a 3-phase motor. And yeah, so that's how that works. So the motor shaft turns 1 time, the drive shaft turns 1 time, drive shaft turns 25 times. And the tires turn 1 time. So at a speed of 3,000 RPM, we get a top speed of about 12. So if this motor turns 3,000 RPM, which is easily doable, obviously, then the machine's going to go about 12. This motor can, as we saw, spin about 7,500 RPM, and that gives a top speed of about 25 miles an hour. I don't really plan on going that fast. I don't know how these U-joints would appreciate spinning that fast. I don't think anything else would be damaged, but it's the U-joints I think would have a problem with that. I'm sure I will do it because I'm a guy and that's what we do, but that's how that works. So that's how that works. I hope that was a good explanation. If it's not a good explanation, leave a comment and I'll see if I can't explain it better. Meanwhile, today what I did was I left this face right here. No, I didn't. I cut this face back about 1 inch, and I cut this face back another inch. When I cut this one back 1 inch, these were essentially the same distance from my axles. And the way that I measure that is I've got this bolt. I use this bolt as a pickup point, and this bolt as a pickup point. So this is a definite distance from the center of that axle, as is this. I use this bolt to determine where that pivot point is, and from this bolt to that pivot point is the same on both sides. That way, whenever I go around the corner, the front tires and the back tires track through the same circle, so I don't need to have a differential in here. The front and rear axles will both be spinning at the same speed going around corners. So as you can see now, this pivot is lined up directly above each other. I went into a little bit of detail on my short video how I did that. And this is just still back here. I don't really know what that distance of this, why am I not using my little pointer? I don't know what the distance of this shaft should be. That's just what it is. So I'm going to put this on pause right now and we'll see how it works. Okay, got it up on jacks. This is just kind of, first of all, just to show it up on jacks. I haven't gone through and finalized all this yet. I will. I won't take but a minute. It's not that important. It's pretty solid. I had someone asking if this was solid, and it is. Like, you can definitely I mean, you can definitely push on that. It's not going anywhere. I don't want to go crazy on it because it is just tack welded, but you can definitely sit on it. I have. It's very solid. It's absolutely not going anywhere. Yeah. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn this as if I was the motor, and I got to put the tensioner on there, and the tensioner is on the side that will normally not be under tension, because the motor is going to turn counterclockwise as we're looking at it now. Yeah, so counterclockwise as we're looking at it now, so it'll pull up on this side of the belt, and yeah, when it goes backwards, that's how I go in reverse. I don't have to shift anything. I just flip a switch and the motor turns backwards. It'll just turn the other way, and it'll put some force against this pulley, but I won't be going backwards all that often, so it'll be okay. Anyway, so here it is. I mean, it's pretty basic right there. Yeah, that's the operation. That's how it goes. So we're full-time four-wheel drive. Be cool if it was selectable four-wheel drive. Would that be cool? I don't know what difference it'd make. It wouldn't make any difference at all. Just be cool to have it, I guess. So that's how that all is, and it turns a lot. In fact, I'll give you a little demonstration of how well it turns. We've exited the garage, and what I did, made this circle, and I did that by hanging onto the steering wheel with it cranked over full lock, with my foot on the accelerator pedal there and a can of marker paint in the other hand, and just kind of drove around in a big old circle to see what kind of turning radius this little Murray has. And one of the things I want to make sure is that this little articulated mower has at least that good, if not better, of a turning radius. I kind of would like to have better, because I'm sticking out of the front considerably further than I am with that guy. This is like total length when it's straightened out about 88 inches. And that one is, well, not 88 inches. The wheelbases of them are the same, 48 inches. But then I got another foot sticking out in front. No, I got about another 20 inches sticking out in front. Whereas on that one I don't. So I'd like to have this to be a little bit tighter of a radius. That way I can still do all the same mowing operations that I do with that little mower there. Get through trees and around obstacles. So, but as you can see, this is way easier to tell you what I did than actually doing it. It's only about 900 degrees outside. I saw a funny thing on Facebook. They said everybody moaning and complaining about how hot it is. Like, well, yeah, at least it's not snowing. Think how miserable it'd be to shovel snow in this heat. That's hilarious. Yeah, so by all accounts, what I have right now, it'll comfortably turn within the radius of that machine over there. So that's good. And now what I can do, I can come in here and have this not quite so tight, but I can come in here, put a stop right here, put another stop right here, and this one will have like an arc to it, or perhaps this one will. One of them will have an arc to it, and the other one will just be a dead stop. And that way, whenever this thing articulates as it turns, it can follow up that stop, and then that stop will be a guide to where this thing needs to not turn anymore. And let's see, I don't know if I can unsteer it outside. It's a whole lot easier to unsteer this thing in the shop, but I've got plenty of travel on my U-joint there, or on my slip joint. It does kind of bottom out a little bit. It doesn't bottom out. What I've done is I've just sort of slipped that in some, about 3/4 of an inch, and that gave me plenty of room to do what I need to do. And I've even got like a little bit of a gap there. I'll tighten that gap up, and that'll give me an extra 1/8 of an inch or something, but just so I've got good grip on that. So all right, yeah, so there you go. That's pretty good. That's definitely what I was shooting for. to have a tighter turning circle than that. I actually used this to pull this thing back in the garage because it was not going to go. I mean, it doesn't look like much, that little hill right there, but no, thank you. That one's 98 degrees outside. Anyway, so now next on the agenda, I think I'll probably just leave it up on the jack stands, just give me better access to the bottom. I'll straighten it out though. I need to put the batteries up here and figure out how they're going to be. I am going to plate this bottom, so I'll just get a piece out and weld it in there, so this will be covered in, and another one. In fact, I'll probably weld it to the top. That way, this surface will be the same height as this surface here, and cover it in on the back as well. And that'll just keep any sticks or whatever from popping up and hitting my batteries, because they don't like to be punctured. And I don't like fires that are nearly impossible to put out. So, yeah, so I'll put some 1/8" diamond plate or something. Put some nice thick steel going across there just to protect the bottom of them. And then I've got some 3/4 inch flat bar. It's going to go right here. Focus you. So 3/4 flat bar go here. I'll cut these tabs off and I'll set one battery in there on those spacers. The batteries got little flanges on the sides and will actually sit on those 3/4 flat bar. And then I'll cut this off and then put another battery on top of that, figure out where the next spacer needs to go for it, and then just extend this frame up a little bit, come up and over, and yeah, so that's all that'll be. And in the front, I'm going to have to extend this front out a little bit and come around and over. This is going to have to be removable because that's the only way to be able to get these batteries out. They will slide in and out from the front. So that's going to have to be removable somehow. But on the topic of that's going to have to happen somehow, steering needs to happen somehow. And I don't really know how to do this. I don't really know what to do about this. What I thought I could do, and I maybe could do, is, so I'll have my steering wheel up here, and then have a shaft that goes down on either side, doesn't matter. Have a shaft that goes down and then goes to a gear, like a bicycle gear, and then have a chain. And the chain, one side of the chain will run up there, and the other side will go over here to another idler, and then it'll go to that side, and that would steer it. But what that wouldn't do, what it would not appreciate, is during a turn, during oscillation, where this is all twisted up. Chains don't like to get twisted up like that. So you could conceivably use a cable. You could use a cable and do a couple wraps around, so where the steering comes down, you could have a pulley in there and then have like 2 or 3 wraps around that cable, and it would come over here and then have a little pulley right there that goes to the front, and then it'd go around a couple wraps and then go to the other side, and then whenever you pull it, it would pull that side towards it. And I think that would be really, really hard. I think that'd be a lot of force to do. So that may not work. What I may end up having to do, and I'm reluctant to do it, I don't, kind of don't want to do it for reasons I'm not exactly sure. Is hydraulics. I could have a hydraulic pump, either a 48 volt, which would be great, or just a 12 volt hydraulic pump, and then just use a rotary steering valve, like on any hydraulic steering, under the steering wheel, and then just have hydraulic pistons down here somehow. I don't know. They probably have it mount here and go to here. Problem is that when this is tightened together, that's only about 11 inches. And then when it's on full extend, well, I'll have to just measure it and find out, and then order a cylinder for it. Anyway, so that's the next 2 things. I'll do that first because it's easier, and then I'll come to this. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.